Amazing.
All right, welcome everyone to the Winner Circle, and I'm a bit emotional as we start this episode. I learned this week that my former co-host and most importantly, my former partner Bianca Leger, she has left us um, on this reality plane, and I just want to take a moment of silence and stillness just to acknowledge her light and her beautiful being. I loved her with my everything, and I know so many people has, and I hope she knows that and where she is now. I hope she's in peace and at rest and happy and dancing. So let's just take a moment to acknowledge Bianca and to send our love and gratitude her way. Okay, but I know she would be want the show to go on, and on today's episode, I interview certified tantra and meditation coach, a teacher with extensive training in energy and esoteric healing, a conscious entrepreneur, an advocate for holistic well-being, and founder of Third Eye Cacao, as well as Third Eye Meditation Lounge and Elixir Bar. Welcome to the Winner Circle, Neil Ryan Dumra.
Hello, Derek. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for sharing your vulnerability and your story and the love you had for your previous partner. And I appreciate you being completely who you are. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Mm-hmm. Well, the goal of these conversations is really to uplift, inspire, and empower everyone tuning in to move forward with greater faith and belief in themselves on their hero's journey ahead. And the vibe I'm trying to cultivate in all these conversations is a positive one. And this first question sets us up as such. What do you love right now about your personal world, Neil? Not about the external world, but what do you love about your personal world? What excites you about your life today?
What excites me most is knowing that um, the last decade, I've dedicated the time, energy, and effort to work through a lot of my karmas, and now internally, both physically, mentally, spiritually, and soulfully, I feel like I'm entering more of a dharmic part of my life, and that feels really good. Feels really graceful. Feels really comfortable. There's definitely challenges. However, I feel like I have more courage and experience as well as desire to overcome those challenges um, with this newfound sense of safety as well as proven success in some ways. So I have more faith, and it feels good to have that.
Beautiful. I listed so many titles that you hold, so many roles that you play, and beyond that, there's more. Um, and for us to get a better idea of who you are, what would you say is your personal mission, Neil, that guides you in all those roles I listed and the roles beyond the said?
Yeah, it's for me, it's the dichotomy between the nature world and the heavily manufactured world. And so what I'm doing a lot of times is creating that middle space, that third space, almost like Third Eye Lounge. We call it the Austin's living room. It's a place where people and communities and connections can have this experience of the quantum. And what I talk about when I say the quantum, it means that your body, your mind, your spirit, your inner story has an ability to heal faster than the speed of light. So whatever it is that's causing you to feel uncomfortable, when you're in these spaces within your community, within the connection, you're able to transcend the limiting beliefs, the limiting thoughts, the limiting feelings into something what I call the oneness state. And what my desire is to create more spaces in the world where we can integrate, where we can have a place where people can interact and feel the comfort of love, the comfort of oxytocin, connection, and also the ability to move forward. There's always a path forward, and we're always looking for that as humans. And so my desire is more so to create those spaces and teach people how to do it too. I'm not one person to be here materializing on all of it, more so to be able to just share and create sustainability within it.
That sounds so beautiful, and I'm very curious to delve into the origin story on how you got to this space. How did you call this upon your now?
Yeah, so growing up, the lounge is actually a representation of my grandparents' apartment. We all had houses and places, my uncles, aunts, cousins. However, my grandparents' tiny apartment was so intentional, from the food to the elixirs to the sounds to the garden to the actual location in itself and how everything was presented. It had a feng shui and a feeling of hominess that made people release their layers of compensation. So they would come into someone else's home and feel like home because of how comfortable they felt. And I started to pick up on this. It wasn't the beautiful mansions that were occupied by my family members. It was my grandparents' home that was consistently filled with so much love. And that's what I desired to create more of, just represent that same kind of energetic.
hmm So tell me about the Third Eye Meditation Lounge in Elixir Bar. What is that space? What could people expect when they enter that?
Exactly. Yeah. This is actually the feeling of releasing expectations. It's the feeling of releasing expectations.
hmm
So when you walk in, you have this feeling of lightness where you don't know what to expect. You don't know who you're going to meet. You don't know what you're going to see. And it's almost like a mystery. It's like when I think about Willy Wonka and this chocolate factory, there's this chocolate, right? But beyond the chocolate, it's the energy, the passion, the creation, this desire for our childlike space to feel alive again. And that's the desires. When you walk in, we have all these different yoga classes and breath work and somatic and all these different ways in which you can embody your body. And then we have this whole array of tools for coherence that help you connect with your heart, with your dualistic mind, releasing some of that, and then getting and clearing your gut stuff so you can actually get into your roots and work on your ancestral stuff. And at the end of the day, you become more and more rooted and developing more vagal tone. And the more vagal toned we
hmm
become, the more resilient we become, the more happy we become, the more we're pouring out oxytocin versus whatever else. And so
hmm
that's what it is. You don't know what you're coming for, but we're coming for the same thing, which is community. And everything comes back to that, that idea where we can grow and evolve among people. We need those reflections. So that's what third
hmm
eye is. It's a place. And anything that is considered a third space is considered, to me, in my mind, it's another third eye lounge. It's another place
hmm
where you can tap into that oneness to see and release anything that's not of unification.
So you had this vision in your mind's eye, but so often people have these ideas, these dreams, and they don't manifest. How did you manifest this dream, this vision into reality? What were the steps you took to actualize it?
I took the same thing from one thing in my life that I got good at, and I just applied it to another. So when I was a child, I danced like Michael Jackson. I had a business around it. So I practiced like dancing all the time. From there, I started playing table tennis. I played professional table tennis as a child, took the table tennis, took the tennis to pickleball. And what it is just going out and playing consistently,
hmm
finding a container to play and then actualize some of the gifts. So it's like I just took that and applied it to something else. So for me, I did 10 years of yoga every day, 3 times a day. So before I opened up a center, I wanted to make sure this is the thing I can actually step behind and stand behind and believe in. And it's just
hmm
one door opening another and applying the same kind of work ethic. And then changing it from a work ethic to a play ethic, realizing if I can actually have fun doing the things I enjoy and I can make money doing it, life can become pretty fun.
hmm So one of my favorite authors, Stephen Pressfield, he describes resistance as that negative force in the world that keeps us from fulfilling our dreams. And it's some things that rears its head every day, every step along the way. Um, what have you learned about overcoming that resistance, that thing telling you not to get out of bed or to not get on your yoga mat or to not um, call and make cold call for that business meeting, or et cetera, et cetera. How have you learned to overcome resistance?
Yeah, so the way I see it is if the resistance becomes something that may be necessity. So there's an amount of resistance that I look at. And it's like every rejection is a choice and chance for redirection. So if the resistance is so great that it's not for me to overcome, then I acknowledge that fact and move on. But if it's something there to actually help me overcome, it's like a guitar. If it has too little tension, it's not going to play right. Too much tension, it's not going to play right. It has to have the right amount where it's both realistic and it's not coming from an egoic space. So the way I think of the ego is it stands for everything gets organized so spirit can take over. And when you're from the spirit, you're speaking in the universal code. So when you and I verse universe, then it's actually bringing light to the conversation of whatever the insecurity is. And then it's no longer an insecurity. It plays out as an out security. And the universe can actually clean it up itself, whether it's supposed
Mhm.
to be of the highest good of the spirit or not. And life is always doing that cleaning up process, whether we like it or not. And if it's not happening on our timeline, that's just our ego saying that. But the universe knows the spirit is always going to do the thing based on the universal timeline. And it's about us as humans to be able to follow and attune to that, I think. This is my personal belief.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that. Curious to delve deeper into your process. And another thing that gets in the way of the process is fear. How has fear reared its head on your journey, and what have you learned about fear?
I think fear is something that we need just a little bit of it. Like, if we're not a little vigilant, then we can lose some of the skills that allow us to survive. But if we're hyper vigilant, we can mess up our nervous system and no longer find the safety.
Mhm.
So it's like also having that right amount of fear, but not allowing fear to take the wheel. So it's good to have a little bit of fear. If you're fearless, you're going to get your ass beat by the world. But if you're fearful, then you won't even touch the world. You won't even be met, or you won't be able to meet people. So it's about having that right dance with life. It's like knowing when you can hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away, know when to run. And
Yeah.
having that ability is what it is to be attuned, and having that awareness. It's really important, I think, in all aspects, entrepreneur, anything. You need to have that. It's part of the journey.
Hmm. Hmm. When was a recent example, or any example, of when fear reared its head? How did you face it, and how did you overcome it?
Yeah, so I've been doing a lot of negotiations, business dealings. I've been actually developing my competitive edge. And it was in that process that I had to learn that nobody's going to take care of me. No one's going to take care of my brand, my process, my intellectual property. I had to do that myself. I had to get smart with those informations in order to protect the thing I love the most. And a lot of times I would get fearful around it because in my ancestry, businesses was taken away from us and all sorts of crazy things. And I used to fear all this stuff. And instead of projecting that onto the dynamics that were showing themselves, I would find as much clarity so my fear would not be there. I would get lawyers, I'd get the right people to look at the documents and face the fear to make sure I wasn't repeating the fearful thing that was causing me to fear in the first place. And facing it is the
Hmm.
only way you can relate to it. And then when you relate to it enough, it's like when you do something enough that was fearful, it's no longer a fearful thing.
Hmm. We inoculate ourselves to fear that thing that was once a lion is now just a mere pussycat.
Yep. Yep.
Um, these conversations are called Welcome to the Winner Circle. What does it mean to be a winner to you? What does winning look like for you in your life?
Yeah. So for me, it's about winning with integrity. Like, I don't care about winning or beating somebody else. That doesn't mean anything to me. It's more so if I'm winning within me and I'm feeling that feeling of winning. And winning is like to be completely embodied and coherent. I can't enjoy winning if it's not really truly winning and it feels good. So like it's got to have this essence of integrity. It has to have this essence of embodiment. That to me is like, and I always go back to sports because that's when I feel the most alive, is when I'm playing sports. But I can't win and beat somebody and think I'm winning if I'm not playing with my all. I got to be fully in it. Otherwise, it's nothing to me. The score doesn't matter to me.
Mhm. Mhm. In order to be fully in, we have to be attending to our self-care in all aspects of that, our physical, or mental, or emotional, or spiritual. What have been your foundational self-care tools that help you go all in?
Yeah, so I do a lot of the cold plunge stuff. I do sauna. I do the methylene blue. I do NAD. I drink lots of ceremonial cacao. I do breath work. I play lots of tennis and pickleball, table tennis. I keep active. I also go to the hot springs and I do a lot of chelation through the water. I swim. I think being active is one of the most important things in this human body, and having the right amount, not pushing yourself too much, but also being able to receive touch, massage, all the different ways you can do fascia release, ways you can help clear any kind of debris that our body carries in our epidermis. So, all the different things, gua sha. I do all of it. So I think all of it's important, especially if you're living in a city, you're not immersed in a nature place. If you're going to be in the hustle and bustle of doing this work, you got to be able to clear your vessel continuously. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah,
And while we're doing, one thing you mentioned is not doing too hard, not doing too much. How do you find that balance?
honestly, I don't know if I do. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. And it's when I don't, my body will automatically start to slow down. So it's not even a thing I can mess with. I listen to my body, and it always got the check engine light telling me the things I need to be doing, and I spend a lot of time making sure that I listen. And if
Hmm.
I'm doing that right, then I don't necessarily have to do much.
Yeah, you're sure are right about how if we don't listen, the body responds, and that check engine light will go on. Hence my hot pack on my back right now. Like I have extreme tension in my rhomboids from overdoing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so when you get that signal, that overdoing signal, how do you switch? How do you switch into the being? What does your being practice look like?
My being practice looks like contacting the people who are also in that same situation, and doing co-healings, going in group situations. I also just, you know, I have different tools. I have a lymphatic drainage tool. I have an Opus sound bed, which takes me into meditations. I do a lot of like calisthenic work, and I do yoga and just things like that. And I just get into the body, take the time to
Uh,
get into the body and feel the body. And if I need hydration, I take care of my salt intake, but usually it's just getting the body to get back into flow. And as soon
yeah.
as I do it at that time, my body knows how to catch back onto rhythm quickly. So
Yeah, yoga is something I'm extremely passionate about, and I feel like we've lost what yoga truly is, especially in on Turtle Island, the North America. It is really all about like the postures, the asanas, the posing, the trying. Whereas like the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, there's 196 aphorisms, and only two of them pertain to the physical postures. Out of the eight limbs of yoga, only one is the asana. I feel we're neglecting the yamas, the niyamas, the pranayama, the tuning out of the external world, the going into the inside, concentrating within, the meditation, and then the eighth limb, samadhi, our recognition of the oneness of us all, our connection with the divine. What does your practice, yoga practice, look like, Neil, and how has that evolved?
yes, so more so, I don't do a ton of the body yoga, the traditional yoga. I do more of a meditation, or I do energy locks, and I do a lot of chanting.
Mm-hmm.
So now more so, I will, um, I don't need to do a lot of the yoga that most people are generally needing to do, because I've done a lot of that physical stuff where my body feels very flexible and everything. It's more so being able to clear the vessel every day through sound, vibration, and just like making sure that my inner chi is circulating through my kundalini and my sacrum, and I can do certain things to get into that. So I have the cobra breath that I do. I do chanting, and then I will do like some inversions and some yoga as well. But it's not like you'll be seeing me do hours and hours of yoga. I'll do yoga like that maybe once a week if needed. And I do a lot of yin practices now. I'm almost 40 years old, and I enjoy, allowing my circadian rhythm to slow down at night and just really get into that beautiful, juicy, slow down state. So, yeah.
You mentioned clearing, and you talked about clearing earlier, clearing karma in particular. Can you elaborate on first what is karma and how have you cleared that, and how does that process look like?
Yeah, so for me, it's a lot of times dichotomies, storylines, and processes in which relationships are taking
Mm-hmm.
place, whether it's like how you were brought up or past life stuff or just certain ways in which you may be interacting. And the karmic patterns will obviously show itself over time. So how you interact with people, how you interact with yourself, it's kind of like working with those reactive and repressive natures enough so that you can see the gifts from why you had to be that, why you chose that relationship or personality dichotomy. So everything has basically a reason. And when you look at it from that perspective, you can transcend it into the gift and eventually the essence. And the essence is always teaching us why that light brought us light.
Mm-hmm.
So,
You're Go ahead.
no, sorry, go ahead. And so I always think of it like that, in a sense, like um, even the most even the most terrible shadows have a gift and a beautiful essence to it. And it's kind of, we need to go through that in order to see the why.
Okay. So your
And that's
shadows.
kind of how I see. Yeah.
Hmm. So your shadows, how did you identify them? And once identified, once awareness brought onto them, then what?
Then it was more so doing some of the inner child healing, being able to work with some of the parts that maybe were abandoned or stuck in trauma responses. So being able to work on the somatics, do some cathartic release, sort of ways to get into the soma and learning how the body was keeping the score in some ways, and
Mm-hmm.
releasing some of the allostatic loads that the body was carrying. And
Mm-hmm.
as we do that, then all of a sudden the thing that was in the micro problem, that becomes, you see it from the macro, and it no longer holds the same power or the same
Mm-hmm.
trauma. You're no longer stuck in the same nervous system state, which causes disease, depression, disassociation, all sorts of stuff.
Mm-hmm. So how did you heal this inner child? Did you do this by yourself? Did you seek a therapist? Like, where does one begin?
I have sought many therapists, many people. I've done lots of trainings, and I can tell you this: one door opened another, and it's not one teacher that taught me everything. It's just learning this information gives you a lens in order to learn how to process the whatever it is that you're holding on to. So each person is going to resonate with trauma healing in a different way, and so for me, one thing taught me one thing, and I worked through it. Another thing taught me another thing, and worked through it. And I'm not completely. No one's. We're always healing. That's the way I see it, and there's no completion to this project that is me. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm still working through it. you know?
Mm-hmm. For
Yeah.
someone curious to delve into this, what's one thread that they could pull upon?
Yeah, I would look into if you're working on trauma, I would work on the thing that got me going on it was tremor release exercises. So that helps kind of work on some of the tension in the psoas. And then from there, I learned about trauma and somatics. And then I learned about the triple vagal method, which is learning about applied polyvagal. So that kind of stuff helps you ignite the energy that's stored in the vagal nerves and help clear some of the energetics that are no longer serving the body,
Mm-hmm. Another
emotions.
thing. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for that. Another
Yeah.
thing that we were talking about pre-call that you're really passionate about right now is relationships, not
Yes.
relationships, but relationships. What is that?
Yeah. So, every day we're going to meet people, always. And there's different levels of intimacy that we create. Some are relationships that pass, like in the sea. Some are relationships that create something bigger than just the two people in the container. It actually brings light to people not only in the container but outside the container. It actually can transit. It can transition potency that we cannot express words. And so that's what I'm talking about, is having those depth and relationships that have this ability to transcend this lifetime and give us so much more than what we look for in relationships. It's beyond the feeling or the thought with people that feels like love.
Feels like love. What have you learned about love? What does that mean to you?
So love to me, there's different like I would say levels of love, and there's different types of love. Like we have a love that we have from our parents, we have a love that we have from romantic partners, for our own children, for friends. And I think that all of them have different purposes, and it teaches us about archetypal ways we relate. And I think that um, we all are made of love, and it's only in the distortion that the symptom comes out as something else. But I feel like everything is love. And it's only in the distortion that we get to receive it as something else.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. So back to relationships and relationships. Curious to delve a bit deeper into that subject. It's particularly of interest of me
Yeah.
right now, going through a significant loss. What have you learned about loss in relationships?
Yeah. So I've had 9-year relationships, I've had 4-year relationships, and I've had shorter ones too. And I realized love, even when you're no longer with somebody, you can still love that person. And that just shows a capacity to love. Some people believe, oh, you can only love one person or you're no longer with them and that love. And I don't believe that. I believe love is something that if we can have a heart, then we can have it full of love. And we don't necessarily have to be in love with somebody to love them. We can still have love for them.
Mm.
And that's the capacity to love. It's like I can love actually be having relationships. In fact, love has no boundaries. That's it teaches you that. So I can love Derek. I can love loving Derek every day. Then it depends on how our love is, but I still love, and I'll always love.
Mm-hmm.
And so that love is that container, and also that energetic that I create with people that keeps my heart clean always.
Mm-hmm. And
I,
mhm.
yeah, go ahead.
And that transcends physical plane, right? So if someone has left our dimension here, that does not stop our capacity to love.
It's always there. In fact,
Mm.
when someone leaves a dimension, the love gets even more imprinted in a way that transcends what we think of love,
How so?
because we understand the finite body and how our soul still can feel the love without the body.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. Um, also, in alignment with this topic of love comes compassion and forgiveness. Let's talk about each and their part in this picture.
Yes. So compassion to me is like the antithesis to empathy. It's like empathy sometimes can be contraindicative to helping others. That's the people you love, especially yourself, and then also helps you tap into the word to for and give. So before, We before we even forgive somebody, we have to understand what it means, and it's all about energy. When we're forgiving, we're no longer holding the giving and receiving of love. It's that transaction of love goes away when we're in forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
And there is no transaction of love. That's not even real. That's why forgiveness has to be there in love. Can't have one without the other. You can't. It's like a symbiotic relationship too. If we don't have the ability to forgive, then it's not loving. So love in itself, without the doing an act of it, if we're holding pain, shame, anything negative in the value of an equation of love, then it's not even love. That's why forgiveness is a part of the dichotomy of love.
And it's a two-way street. It's forgiveness to another, but also of oneself.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And what have you learned about that second part, the forgiveness of oneself?
Yeah, it's I think a man's hardest duty to do that and take the time to do that. I think a lot of times we want to forgive everybody except ourselves. And I'm always doing this. I'm trying to create, I'm not trying, I'm actively and intentionally allowing forgiveness to be a part of my story too.
Mm-hmm.
And when I do that, it actively, intentionally puts forgiveness in all my other relationships too. And it starts, I can't go outside and start forgiving everybody and then hopefully there's enough to forgive me later. It just doesn't work that way. Take that withenness and practice it with others. And then it comes back in that way. I love that. I love that dichotomy of having to do a little bit with yourself, then go out and do it with others, then go back in and do it more with yourself, and go do it else with others. That's the practice. Otherwise, these are just mind words.
So much wisdom shared already, Neil, and I'm really grateful for everything and your generosity with your wisdom. Yeah. A lot of this wisdom shared, you've learned from a lot of this wisdom you're sharing is things taught to you by various mentors and helpers you've met along your hero's journey. Let's acknowledge some of these people. Who have been these individuals that have helped you? Of course, there's many, so let's just name a few. Who were they, and what were your primary takeaways you learned from them that you've now incorporated into your being, who you are?
Yeah. Well, my father, for sure. He's been a big, person in my life. We had a lot of issues, but then also a lot of love, and he was a great teacher. And then this guy who owns Casa de Luz, who's the person running it, he'll never say that he's the owner of Casa de Luz, but he's been a person running this place for 36 years, and he's been a mentor for me. His name is Wayo Eduardo Longoria. Love that man and also trust him and experienced a lot where he taught me how to value myself truly, and it was a great experience. Aside from that, there's a man named Bart Sharp who's a mentor and teacher. Taught me how to release a lot of dualistic thinking and be able to work on some of the clearing work that I've been doing. There's a lot of people there's a guy named Jeff Brown who I love his writing. He's a great writer, and he's been teaching me a lot about how to bring eloquence to my feelings and to my words. And I really truly believe that power in writing and being able to.
So let's kind of.
Those are the few that I can put together right now.
Yeah, sorry, you're just cutting out a little bit there. Sorry for interrupting. I was just wanting you to kind of delve a little bit deeper into two of these subjects. First, what did you learn about how to value yourself?
How did I start to do that?
What did you learn about that and how? Sure.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So what I learned is um, no one's gonna do that for you. No one's gonna put value to you. So if you don't do it, then there will be no value there. And that you only get to learn that through experience, and also it's a form of slavery to go through that. And everybody has experienced some of that, whether it's past life, this life, and and the more you start to take the chains off yourself, the more you start to find the freedom and an expression of who and what you're about, and that requires reflection. And it's a beautiful, it's like a warrior becoming de-armored and fully confident in de-armoring, and that's the shedding of all the layers, and in that process you start to find value, because all the shit that is not you gets rinsed off, and then hello, and what is left is value, and it's up to you to give yourself that. No one's
A
going to do that
gift,
for you.
a real
Yes.
gift. And how about
Mm-hmm.
your releasing of dualistic thinking? What is that and what does that look like?
Yeah, so when I think about dualistic thinking, it's like the good, bad, right, wrong, the judge. It's almost like the shark, the thing that someone's looking for that could be
Mm-hmm.
wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when you can release that, you can
Mm-hmm.
find more flow and learn how to be more compassionate. And
Mm-hmm.
it's good to have the ability to see between right and wrong and good and bad. But if
Mm-hmm.
that's your only way of seeing, it can be very limiting for your happiness, for your heart, for your joy, for your connection. Nobody really wants to be around a judge all the time. And that's just
Mm-hmm.
it.
Mm-hmm. So how does one see beyond that?
There's ways there's tools, there's all these different tools. So as soon as something comes up in your being, you can actually look at it, feel it, and allow it to be burned through the digestive fire. And we can do that through somatics and energetics and words. So if something comes up, you can actually do a conscious clearing around that feeling that comes up. And it's only you, because something that's in your psyche, you start bringing it up enough, and yeah.
So every episode I close with the final three questions, and we're at this point. The first question. Through all the highs and lows that is your hero's journey, Neil, what has been the greatest life lesson you've learned on your path that you feel called in this very moment to share with us?
Yes. One of the biggest life lessons is in the world we live in, it's so much more abundant than the perception of of the lack, because we're not in lack. And so anytime you feel that way, just go out in nature and see it and feel it and experience it. If I can remember that, and I can remember if I could have learned that a long time ago and remembered that, that would have been huge. So
Mm-hmm.
as an entrepreneur, if you're stuck on a computer, you're doing too much, just go into nature. It's the biggest cure.
Mm-hmm.
That's one. Two, I would always recommend to have people around you that can reflect well, that can help you show you yourself. People you can trust that can give you the mirror and help you cut your shit quicker than you can yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So having good mentors and reflection around, I think that's super important.
Thank you. Um, in three words, how would you describe the experience you are having on this earth? And you could elaborate on these three words if you wish.
3 words that help me experience this earth.
Yeah, 3 words. They could be just 3 separate words that just describe the reality you're experiencing on this earth.
Yes. Okay, one uh, integrative, and the third one would be rooted.
Integrative, rooted, and your connection is coming in and out. So I did not hear the first one. Integrative, rooted. And what was the
And the
first one?
first one was quantum.
Okay, let's delve into those. Why quantum? Why integrative? And why rooted?
Okay, so quantum, it's like when you're in the quantum, this is how I perceive the quantum. It's like our
Mm-hmm.
mind and the dualistic thing that's trying to fix things or see things. You
Mm-hmm.
don't need that in the quantum. In the
Mm-hmm.
quantum, everything happens faster than the speed of light.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no right or wrong in that field. The field is all of light. And when we're
Mm-hmm.
experiencing that, it happens so quickly. You don't need to question it. There's no question. It's just the answer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's the quantum.
Yep.
Integrative is all about as we do this work, as we go through levels, and without the integration, there's no in out. And the only way it gets in and it gets to sit in is when it gets integrated. So that's why
Mm-hmm.
it's super important that we actually understand whatever it is we're learning
Mm-hmm.
to stand under.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last one, what was the last word?
Rooted.
Rooted. So my whole philosophy is if you're going to rise, you must root down. The only way to rise up is if you root down. And I'm a tennis player, and every time I'm about to receive the ball, I'm just grinding my feet into the ground, feeling the ground as much as I possibly can so I can jump up and get that ball. And it's in
Mm-hmm.
that feeling, that encompassing feeling of being so close to the ground that I feel that connection. So I
Mm-hmm.
love that feeling of rooting down to rise up. I think it's super important.
Mm-hmm. How does one root in the everyday life other than on the tennis field?
It's just about doing the body work. It's about getting on the yoga mat. It's about going into nature. It's about doing whatever the heck it is that makes you feel grounded. Whatever it is, it could
Mm-hmm.
be anything.
Mm-hmm.
Your ritual could be different than Neil's. However, it's yours, and when you make it yours and you own it, that's it.
Mm-hmm. Final question. We've played around with time. We've examined the past. We've examined your present. Let's jump into the future. Let's transport ourselves to a time a bit far away from now, maybe 45 or so years away. And we're going to be alongside an 85-year-old Neil Ryan Dumra. Who is that 85-year-old man? Where are you? Who are you surrounded by? What is the legacy you left here in your 85 years? And what are the predominant feelings in your being?
Mm. I would have hoped to have accomplished all my goals with the businesses. I would have hoped to have had a family and have a family, a wife, kids, grandkids. I'd hoped to be living in potentially in a warm, beautiful place somewhere in India, potentially, or traveling still, and hopefully still drinking cacao, and also still playing the sports and doing the fun things that I'm doing. So not too much different, other than accomplishing some of the family goals and some of the business stuff. The legacy, I feel like I've already achieved everything I've ever wanted to in terms of my legacy. I love who I am. I love how I show up. And only so I'd love to be able to show up with more of that essence, more of that love, more of that connection. So being able to dive deeper into myself and become more embodied, that's the goal. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And the predominant feelings in your being, in your soul.
Uh, I would say it would be fulfillment.
Mm-hmm. I
Yeah.
would just like to invite you just to lean into that place of fulfillment. Maybe close your eyes and breathe into it, and just really embody that state of being fulfilled so immensely as an 85-year-old, and just reflect upon the impact you've left on so many and accomplished all these goals. Lean into that, feel into that, embody that. And I'm going to bring you back to now, to today. And that 85-year-old man, he whispers in your ear a piece of wisdom. What does that 85-year-old Neil say to you?
Enjoy the ride.
You're doing it. We're doing it. It's been such an honor. It's been such a pleasure to chat with you and get to know a bit more of your story. And I hope it has fulfilled this goal of inspiring, uplifting, and empowering someone along the way. I know it has me and maybe you as well. To close
Yes.
every episode, we bring our fist in for a digital fist bump into the winner circle. Boom.
Thank you. Thank you, Derek. It was so good to chat with you.
Absolutely. And if people want to connect with you, they can find you on Instagram at Neil Ryan Dumra, and that links to all your businesses, all the things you got going on. Anywhere
Yep.
else you could send them, or any last closing words?
If you need some of the best ceremonial cacao, go to thirdeyecacao.com. If you want coaching, I also do that, thirdeyetonic.com. So much
Mhm.
love, and would love to see you at Third Eye in Austin, Texas. We're here, right here. There's a studio. People are going into classes as we speak. And yeah, thanks so much, Derek. So good to
Thank you
talk to you.
so thank you
Yeah.
so much, and thank you, Bianca Leger. May she be in peace, whoever she's listening to this. Thank you, thank you,
Rest in
thank
peace.
you. Rest in peace. I
Yes.
love you.
Thank you. Have a good one, brother. Did you stop recording?